The following program contains graphic displays of courage. If you suffer from weak knees, this show might not be right for you. Check with your orthopedic specialist.
Proclaiming the truth in the highways and byways of the world. Fighting for justice in the dark alleys of politics. Raising the voice of resistance to a fevered pitch. The host who has no equal. He uses sweet and low. Randall Terry.
Welcome. Thank you. I love fake applause. Andrew, turn it up. Yeah. Yes. Throw in some cheers. Drop in some cheers. It's me, the power-hungry maniac, and I'm here for another feeding. Nice bump on the elbow, Gary. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a great show for you today. You're not going to want to miss a single minute, including all of our commercials. Our commercials have more content than CNN in their regular programming. Today's top stories. Elliot Spitzer tries to manhandle Rand Paul. Rand Paul turns around and gives Elliot Spitzer a good old thumping, butt whooping, or as the president would call it, a shellacking. And we're going to play clips that you are going to love. I also have to talk about Sarah Palin. You're not going to want to miss that analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Today's program brought to you in part by Rand Paul for president. The Tea Party Express going all the way to the White House. And by CNN, where ideologues and activists masquerade as journalists. Keith Olbermann, eat your heart out, baby. I'm going to take a quick break, give Jihad Granny a chance to show her intelligence, and then back with clips from CNN, where Spitzer and Paul are duking it out. Ooh.
Allah Akbar. Good morning, boys and girls. Today we talk about those people called Christians. Idolaters, haters of Allah. You know, one day Muslims, we take over America, and then we defend our freedom to kill the infidels.
Welcome to the program, friend. Let me tell you something. One of the best things that you can do for yourself is to be committed to principle before party. Yeah. Even Tea Party, by the way. Hear me out. One of the things that will free you up is when you no longer are loyal to partisan politics. I'm Republican. I always do what Republicans tell me. I'm strong Republican. I'm a Democrat. I always do what the Democrats tell me. No. Break free from the partisan mold. Put principle first. And then you can say the truth. Because your loyalty is to principle and to the truth, not to the party leaders. One of the reasons this country's in a crisis is because people get to Washington, D.C., and then they put the party leadership ahead of the desires of their constituents. Does anyone know that we just had like 70 congressmen lose their job? Why is that? Because they followed Nancy Pelosi's wishes, and Barack Hussein Obama's wishes, and Harry Reid's wishes, more than the desires and the demands of their constituents back home. Put principle first, and you'll stay out of trouble. Now, we're going to spend the rest of this program talking about Rand Paul and a little bit about Sarah Palin. So, to the news we go. As a backdrop for Rand Paul, let's use, I hate to even say the name, Elliot Spitzer. Word in the street is that Elliot Spitzer in ancient Aramaic means he that is the child of the devil. Well, Rand Paul last night, in so many words, announced that he's running for president. President? Can he do that? He hasn't even been sworn in as a senator yet. Well, it worked for Obama. Why not Rand Paul? I'll show you. By the way, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll show you by the end of the show. You'll see it with your own eyes. Let's roll the first clip, Andrew.
Just some basic numbers, what the budget is and what the deficit is. And you know these numbers, I'm sure. A budget of about $3.8 trillion and a deficit of about $1.3 trillion, and then a second chart that's going to show folks where the money really goes, $2.3 trillion of it to these programs, Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, defense, and interest. Now, you've been asked over and over where you want to cut, and what you've said is across the board. Is that correct?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Now, but then here's what mystifies me. You're a doctor, and I think, am I correct, 50% of your practice came from Medicare and Medicaid, government, federal reimbursements to you for practicing medicine. Is that correct?
Right.
Now, am I correct then that you've said, and I got to read this right here, that the one place you don't want to cut is doctor reimbursement rates?
You've been reading too many liberal bloggers. Let me set you straight there.
Senator, is it correct you don't want to cut those?
No, let me set you straight. What I have said is that, look, if we want to cut physicians' fees automatically without a vote, let's lump all federal employees in there, senators, congressmen, and all 2 million federal employees, and let's automatically cut their pay every year without a vote, and then I'm all for it. But right now, let's don't single out one set of people and say that somehow we're going to balance the health care budget on one set.
I don't think that any of us can grasp the magnitude of the crisis we are facing economically. Did you see those numbers at the beginning? $1.3 trillion is money we just don't have. We're going to go to the Chinese to borrow it. So it's not just that we have a socialist plantation, the redistribution of wealth, the young generation to the elderly, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and interest on the debt, take defense out. We're borrowing money from the Chinese to pay for our socialist programs. In any estimation of political and economic reality, this is a crisis. It is similar to a Ponzi scheme, and it is going to come crashing down. At least Rand Paul has the integrity to say, we're going to make across-the-board cuts. And he held Spitzer's feet to the fire because when Spitzer, who's filthy rich, by the way, when he says, well, you doctors, you money-loving, filthy, lucre-grabbing doctors, you're the problem, and we need to reduce your fees. When Spitzer does that, he's violating the commandment, you shall not covet. That is the politics of greed, of envy, of jealousy. The reason that Medicare and Medicaid are a problem is because those doctors make so much money. Rand Paul says, hey, let's have across-the-board cuts for all federal employees, including senators and House members, to which I say, hear, hear, go Rand Paul, go. I'm going to take a quick break. The clips get better. The fighting gets more intense. And I will show you how that Rand Paul is in fact saying to the world, if you've got an ear to hear, that he's running for president. I'll be right back.
The mountain roads in West Virginia are outfitted with signs that say, look out for fallen rocks. To which my father said, let the fallen rocks look out for themselves.
Moments with Moses. Cursed shall be your basket and your kneading trough. Cursed shall be the fruit of your body and the fruit of your ground, the increase of your cattle and the young of your flock.
Welcome back to the program, friend. Eliot Spitzer jumps on Rand Paul. Rand Paul punches him right between the political eyes. See for yourself.
Senator, but I'm correct in saying you've opposed cutting Medicare reimbursement rates, even though the Medicare system is the single largest deficit hole we are facing as we look at our budget, and reimbursing doctors is the largest piece of that.
You do have to figure out how to balance the Medicare budget, and it's going to take a lot of different things to do it, but you can't balance it simply on one facet.
Right, but
what you should do is that if you want to cut physician fees, which you need to acknowledge to your viewership have already been cut by 50%. When I started in '93, fees are now 50% of what they were in 1993. So they already have been cut by 50%. What you have to picture is you want to cut them by 40% more, fine, go ahead, but there may not be any doctors left seeing Medicare patients. So don't stick your head in the sand and say you're going to fix this problem and all will be hunky-dory again. It won't work. You won't have any doctors to see patients.
Senator, doctor, I'll call you both. I don't mean to be impertinent here, but what was your peak income over the last decade? What's the most you earned in any 1 year?
If you want to make this about me personally, you're not going to have a real intelligent discussion. But if you want to make this about, I mean, do I want to go into your personal past and talk about your past on this program? I don't think so.
Senator, my income.
Let's talk about things about how we fix Medicare.
That's what I'm trying to do.
There are going to be ways we have to fix Medicare. For example, Part B is only 25% paid for by taxes and premiums. So it's 75% paid for out of the general budget. So I think we have to figure out how do we pay for that. That may include talking about eligibility in the future, talking about changes in age. It may talk about changes in premiums. It may talk about means testing. And there are honest people discussing these things as we speak, but we're not going to really make any point about trying to vilify doctors for making a good living.
Again.
Well, there you have it. And for those of you who don't know, this was a huge problem for the Democrats. Eliot Spitzer, until very recently, was the governor of New York. He was forced to resign because of a huge prostitution scandal. So when Rand Paul says, you want to get into personal life, and Eliot Spitzer kind of quiets down, that's why. But let's go to the heart of the economics of this. Everything is going to have to be addressed. Nothing is off the table. Rand Paul knows that doctors' fees are going to be cut, but he's also correct in saying that the doctors aren't the villains here. The system itself is inherently corrupt because socialism is inherently corrupt. I don't know any other way to say it. Let's watch one more clip. Play it, Andrew.
Social Security and SSI, Supplemental Security Income, $11.7 billion to Kentucky residents. Would you cut that by 25% so you could balance the budget the way you want to?
Well, no, I think what we have to do is look at certain programs that we don't need to be doing at all at the federal level. And if you eliminate some of those entirely, then you don't have to be as draconian with other things.
Can you specify which ones?
No, well, let me finish my answer. What I would also say is that Social Security and Medicare, I've said repeatedly, we're not for changing any of the eligibility or any of the payments for those currently on. We're talking about the next generation. We're talking about typically most of the people who want to have an honest discussion about this are talking about reform of those 55 and under. But you have to immediately start making these decisions. And if you don't want to have the discussion about how we fix this, what you need to be doing is bringing liberals on your program and asking them, how do you continue to have these programs? What I'm saying is we need to fix these programs that you can't continue to borrow money from China to pay for your daily expenses.
Senator.
I have to tell you, he looks more and more presidential to me. Rand Paul manhandled Eliot Spitzer, who's a very aggressive, obnoxious host, in my opinion. Rand Paul's doing a lot better now than he was doing at the beginning of his campaign, and at the beginning of his campaign, he was doing a great job. Listen to me. Are you willing, no, come here, come closer. Are you willing, if you're 45, 50 years old, 30, 35, are you willing to forego Social Security? Are you willing to forego Medicare? That is ultimately what this is going to boil down to. I'm nearly 50. I'm near it. I don't expect to ever get Social Security. I don't expect to use Medicare. And I would give it up today, and lose every penny of the tens of thousands of dollars that I have paid into the system. Lose it all if they just let me out so that I don't have to keep paying into this socialist redistribution of wealth. Just let me out. Let me decide what I want to do with my money, my old age, all of it. Let me out. Of course, they're not going to do that because why? I'm part of their slave labor force. But we're going to be able to fix this when people like you and like me, following leaders like Rand Paul, who finally will finally say, let me out. Let's stop the Ponzi scheme. We'll do it in a humanitarian but timely manner. We can't just keep putting it off. So people, my mom is on Social Security, all right? So I'm not going to say, Mom, sorry, too bad, bye. But at some point, this crisis is going to be dealt with And it's going to happen whether we do it on our terms or whether we do it on the terms of the market, where no one will lend us any more money. No one will buy our debt to keep funding these Ponzi schemes. Then what are we going to do? I'm going to take a break. When we come back, I'll show you with Rand Paul's own words. He's running for president, baby. Uh-huh.
Hey, you Republicans, get ready for real fights. Get ready for real fights. Defund Planned Parenthood. And you Democrats, we're sorry to see you go. Hope you enjoy life in the real world. You might be able to get a nice little job at Starbucks or at Walmart. Huh?
Welcome back to the program, friend. I've just got to tell you, when I run for president someday, we're going to talk about these things. I am going to run at them with all of the pathos and flair that I can muster up. But it's not about me right now. It's about Rand Paul going at it with Elliot Spitzer. Listen to this last clip we're going to play for you, and you tell me how he has just signaled to the American people he's running for president. Roll the tape, Andrew.
You have Republicans who say, oh, we'll cut domestic spending, but we're unwilling to cut military spending. You have some liberals on the other side who are deficit hawks and who are serious and who say, oh, we'll cut military spending, but we won't cut domestic spending. The bottom line is the compromise is you do have to look across the board. I will be preparing a budget over the next 2 months, and it will include a balanced budget. And I will give people different alternatives.
Well,
I will give them a one-year budget. I will give them a one-year budget, and that will have significant cuts. It may not be palatable to many people. There will be budgets that will be balanced over 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the thing is what we cannot do is simply put our head in the sand and keep doing what we've been doing.
Well, did you get it? Did you see it? You know how he's running for president, right? He said, as a senator-elect, by the way, he said, I'm bringing a balanced budget to D.C. You see, constitutionally, the only people required to submit a budget are the House of Representatives and the United States President. And he said, this literally, senator-elect, not even sworn in yet as a senator, he said, I'm going to bring a balanced budget to town for people who want to have an intelligent, honest discussion about how we stop deficit spending. Now, you heard him. There'll be the tough one. The tough love happens this year. And then there'll be the one that happens over a 2 or 3 year window. But what you can bank on is the total elimination of some programs. Goodbye, NPR, public radio. Goodbye, Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education. You are gone. But boy, you can bank on a lot of stuff being eliminated so that the cuts that happen in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid can be gradual, and then they can be phased out. Friend, Tea Party activists, you and I say, hey, we're against socialism. I want you to notice how much Elliot Spitzer and the other people over at CNN and the folks over at MSNBC and even some of the fraidy cats over at Fox, how they're all taunting the Republicans now. Okay, you want to balance the budget? You're going to touch Social Security? You're going to touch Medicare? You're going to touch Medicaid? Well, if I was running for office or if I was in office, I would say, you bet. We got into a scam, and we've got to get out. We've experimented with the socialist plantation, and it's time to close the darn thing down. I'll be right back with a quote from one of our founding fathers and just an itty-bitty word about Sarah Palin. Oh, I'm not looking forward to this. I'll be right back. Patrick Henry said, it cannot be emphasized too clearly and too often that this nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians. Not on religion, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. Friend, the gospel of Christ calls upon us, as does Mosaic law, to care for the poor. But the gospel of Christ does not authorize us to put a gun to our neighbor's head to force our neighbor to pay for our food and our medical needs and our living expenses in old age. At that point, it's not the gospel of Christ, it's the bad news of Karl Marx and the socialists. Finally, I have to say that I saw Sarah Palin's speech live on CNN, and I was truly distressed. I like Sarah Palin. I actually want her to be president someday. But as I was watching the speech, I just had this horrible sense come over me that she's not taking those windows seriously enough, and that she might be working herself out of a job. Sarah, if you watch this, use those moments more wisely.